This poor guy had a little accident coming out of the oven. So we're going to taste him here, see if he's any good. Hey guys, this is Katie with Vintage and Vinyl, back with another great video for you today. And in this video, I'm participating in the Cookies for Santa collaboration hosted by Beth over at Carolina Sweet Treats and Pretties and Dot from Dot Likes Red. And this collaboration is going to be so much fun because I get to share with you my great-grandmother's Scotch bread recipe. And this is a very special cookie. I remember this growing up. It was so delicious. I even got to spend time with my grandmother making this, and I'm so glad that I took the time to learn it because it is a real family treasure. In fact, it is so good that our family had to keep tabs on how many cookies each family member ate because BB only made so many, and we wanted to make sure that everybody got a fair share at Christmas time because they are just scrumptious. Okay, so I'm going to teach you today how to make these cookies, and they're super easy because they're just 3 ingredients and you can't beat that. And of course, to help us along with this recipe, I'm going to be using my grandmother's rolling pin that I used when we baked all the cookies together, and of course all of her vintage cookie cutters. You can't have the Scotch bread without the star. You gotta have the star. Then you gotta have the bell. Yes, the bell. And of course, Mr. Santa. Isn't he so fun? This is Cookies for Santa after all. And then the Christmas tree. So we've got all of our fun cookie cutters here ready to go. And of course, the other thing we're going to need is the cookie tin. Yes, the good old classic Tupperware tin. I remember this so well. BB would sit at the round dining table that I now have, and she would hold open the tin, and I'd load all the Scotch bread in, and then she'd say, okay, you're gonna burp it. And here's how you burp Tupperware. I know that sounds weird, but it's really what you do. You put your hand on this little center dot and then burp all the air out of it and shut the lid tight. And that's how we kept all the Scotch bread nice and fresh throughout the Christmas season. All right, so we've got everything we need here, and I'm gonna get started right now. Okay, so as I mentioned, this recipe is super easy. There's really not a lot involved. There is, however, just a little bit of skill because you gotta get these cookies super thin. Scotch bread is a lot like shortbread, except for it's not doughy and thick. It's nice, thin, and crispy, and it's perfect to go with your morning cup of Christmas coffee. So you're going to just need 3 things. That's 1 cup of softened butter, a 1/2 cup plus 2 tablespoons of sugar, and 2½ cups of flour. That's all you need. Super easy. The other thing, of course, as I mentioned in the beginning, is you will need a rolling pin. You'll need some cookie cutters, whatever desired shape you would like. And then I have down here, I'll show you in just a minute, my grandmother's rolling mat. And that is something that you're probably going to want to have to keep your counters mess-free, and it's going to be a little easier to roll out your dough. And of course, it's always fun to add in your great-grandmother's Fostoria butter dish. You can't beat that American pattern. So let's start whipping up some cookies by hitting the mixer with all of these 3 ingredients. All right, so we've got our trusty KitchenAid mixer here. Any mixer will do, but KitchenAid or any type of bowl stand mixer is really going to be your best thing for the Scotch bread. Of course, you could use a hand mixer, but that is going to take a little while, so we'll start with that. And then we're going to add in our butter first. Now, 1 cup of butter is basically 2 sticks of butter. So I've got some softened butter here. This has just been sitting out on the counter for a while. And yes, folks, don't be scared. You can leave your butter out on the counter. It will not hurt it and you will not get sick. I have done this my whole life. My dad has done this, and I've never gotten sick. I've had many French baguette with butter on it from Dad's butter dish in the kitchen, and it has been a-okay. So we've got our 2 sticks of butter. Now we're going to want to add in some of our other ingredients here, which there really isn't a lot to this. We're going to need a 1/2 cup of sugar to start, and we're just going to add this in to the butter. So just like that, doesn't have to be super packed, but you do want a good even level. And then we're going to add in our 2 teaspoons of sugar. I might have said tablespoons at the beginning, but I'm sorry, it is teaspoons. Now, I don't know why exactly it's 2 extra teaspoons of sugar. Not sure who figured that out. Guess that was kind of how the recipes went back in my great-grandmother's day. And we are going to slowly start mixing this together while adding in the flour. You want to add in the flour little bit by little bit here. So I've got some flour. Now, a little pro tip, I like to keep my flour in the freezer. That sounds a little wacky, but I'm telling you, it really does keep the bugs out and it keeps it fresher longer. So if you haven't heard of that, definitely worth giving it a try. And we are going to need a whopping 2½ cups of flour. So that is the largest ingredient in this recipe. And I have to say, this is a super inexpensive, great way to bring your family a whole lot of yum and joy this holiday season. This really does feed a crowd. So I have made these so many times for, of course, different baking events through churches and bazaars and fairs. It's really great as a little charity thing if you need to bake some cookies or for your kids at school this time of year. So we are going to slowly tilt our mixture on. You don't want a high speed here. We're just going to kind of slowly get it mixing at a low speed and combine that sugar and butter together, cream it all, and then just slowly add in a little flour at a time. Just a little bit, not the whole bunch. Just until it gets nice and incorporated. So we'll add that in. And notice I have the paddle attachment on. It is really good for this kind of thing. I like to spoonful the flour in to my measuring cup as well, because I find that to be just a little easier this way than making a mess all over the counter by trying to scoop it in there. So I just sort of, with clean hands, get that and then level it off. So that's already 1 cup in there. And we're going to start to add in our other cup slowly, just like this. And I'll be back with you folks when we get to the consistency we're looking for. So let me show you what we've got going on in the mixer right now. We have all of our ingredients fully incorporated into the bowl, but we need to get all of that mixed together. And as you can see, it's still quite lumpy. You don't want all the lumps. You really want it to get nice and smooth, more into a dough form, because you're going to roll this out. Now, of course, you don't want this to be overmixed, so there is definitely a balance here. But as you can see, it's starting to get smoother and smoother and less big chunks of butter to flour and sugar and so forth. So that's kind of what you're looking for. The other thing that you might want to do is dust off some of the flour on the side of the mixer. And you might have to stop the mixer every so often and get the butter that's kind of clumped on the paddle off of it and make sure it's kind of mixed around. But when this gets all finished up, we will be back. All right, so the dough is all mixed up here, and I think this came out really well. There's no butter, flour, or sugar left in the bowl, which we don't want. We want all of it to be nicely combined together. However, I do kind of remember my grandmother leaving this a little bit more crumbly. So it's possible that I might have let this mix just a tad too long, but I think it will come out okay. We don't have any butter, sugar, or flour left, and that's really the main goal here, is to get all of that nicely combined. So we are going to take this off of the mixer here and bring it on over to our mat. And I'm going to show you what we need to do with the mat in just a second. All right, so our dough is all wrapped up in the bowl and it is fully incorporated and ready to go. I'll show you what that looks like here in just a second, but we want to get our mat prepared. Now, I'm sure this has a more technical name, but I'm not really a baker. This is kind of the only thing that I can make in the way of baking. I'm much more of a cook, so this is what I call BB's mat. And we are going to put a little bit of water under here to help this mat stick to the counter. That way when we are rolling out the dough, it doesn't move around and shift, which can be really annoying. So we're just going to turn on the faucet, and you just want to sprinkle, not much, but see, just a little bit of water. So our board is down on the counter with a little bit of water, and now I have added just a bit of flour. You do want to continue to use flour throughout this process because it's really going to make it super easy to roll out your dough, and things just will not stick this way. So we've got our dough that we've already mixed up here, and we're just going to pour that out onto the flour, and we're going to roll this out and kind of get it together. Now, we don't want to kind of over mix this or press on it. We really just want to get it into a nice ball. So we're going to roll this out first, and you can always flour your rolling pin as well. That really does help. I flour the rolling pin and the cookie cutters, and we're just going to roll this out and then shape it into a nice ball and put it right into the refrigerator. I don't leave it in long. I leave it in about 5 to maybe 10 minutes at max because I don't want it to get too hard, and that is something that will be a real problem if you're trying to cut the cookies. That is something you don't want. So we're just going to roll this out here, get it nice, and then we're going to roll it up into a ball and get it into the refrigerator. So I don't remember growing up BB really making this ball super smooth like you would bread dough or any type of other doughs. Of course, like I said, I'm not really a baker, so I can't say that my method here is going to be just the perfect thing in the world of baking. I'm sure there's someone that bakes for a living watching me thinking, oh my gosh, what is this lady doing? But this is just how I remember making it. And of course, the dough will sort of start to fall apart at first, but if you press it all together long enough without doing it too much, you will get a nice ball where it all kind of forms beautifully. So we are going to just get that nicely together there. Just stick any extra on top and kind of mash it down. That's the best I can tell you to do. And then we are going to wrap this up in saran wrap and put it in the refrigerator. So I'll be right back with that saran wrap. So of course, when I was at the grocery store getting all the ingredients for this, I thought, oh, I already have everything except for butter. Well, I was wrong. I left out the saran wrap on my list, and I don't normally use saran wrap. So if you don't have saran wrap, a good old Ziploc bag will do just fine. Just something to cover it to keep it from drying out while it's in the refrigerator. So we're just going to put that down in the bag, loosely covered, seal it up, and we're going to wait about 5-10 minutes for this to get a little firmer and chilled. And we will be back to make the rest of the cookies. All right, so while the dough is chilling in the refrigerator, it's a good idea to go ahead and do two things. First thing we need to do is preheat our oven. We're going to bake these cookies at 300 degrees for about 20 to 25 minutes. The other thing we want to do is go ahead and set a timer. That way we don't have any issues with our dough over chilling in the refrigerator. So I'm going to put 10 minutes on the clock and just sort of continue to monitor it at about the 5-minute mark just to see that it's getting firm, but not too firm. Well, golly gee, we can't bake Scotch bread without taking a moment to read this fun little plaque. Mothers-in-law are like seeds. You don't need them, but they come with the tomato. I love this. I would stand in the kitchen with BB making Scotch bread, and she would stop and read this and tell me about how her mother gave it to my grandfather, Papa, and it was always in their kitchen ever since. And I just love this. I'm so glad I have it now. And since we're baking Scotch bread, I thought I'd share that memory with you. So the time is up now on the dough, and it is ready to be rolled out. Now, I did end up leaving this dough in a little longer than normal, simply because when I felt the dough, it was still very squishy. It wasn't kind of that medium firmness that we're looking for. So you can just kind of test that by setting the timer and checking on it every so often, but you don't want it to be hard as a brick. but you don't want it to be soft either, like super soft, just where it's got a little bit of give like this when I touch it. So I think we're all ready to go. Now, we do want to flour our board again. It is very important to use lots of flour while you are rolling out these cookies, because otherwise things will stick. And I have to say, I love this recipe because it doesn't require a lot of dirty dishes and mixing bowls with egg and all kinds of gloopy, gloppy mixture. It's just pretty simple and straightforward. The only mess really is the flour. So we're going to flour up our piece of dough too, and our rolling pin. Get that all nice and floured. And of course, you can always use a rolling pin sleeve. I believe my grandmother used to have one, and that worked out really nicely. We're just going to roll this down. Now, this dough is going to get rolled out pretty thin. When you think of shortbread, people typically think of that kind of thicker shortbread that you get at the store, like Walker's, with the little Scotty dog, I believe, on the label. But this, you want to roll out really nice and thin. BB never liked a thick Scotch bread cookie. So we're just going to get this rolled out. And of course, it's sticking a little bit. So when it starts to do that, it is time to add a little bit more flour. That part I remember really well. Cooking with BB is being in charge of the flour. And of course, you may not get all of it rolled out in one go. You're going to have to do this several times. So just get an area that's thin, and then we can start cutting the cookies. Now, you want to put them on a baking sheet, just a regular baking sheet. A cookie sheet will do as well if you want to use that. I just have a plain baking sheet. I'm sorry, I don't know the size, but I will be glad to show it to you. And we're just going to cut these out using our fun shapes, and then we will transfer them to the cookie sheet. Really, that's it. You don't need to butter or grease the cookie sheet or line it with anything. It is fine as it is. And you can see that they're thin enough when you start seeing a little bit of the mat underneath. So you just kind of have to do this by feel. And of course, if you want to make them thicker, you can. I personally am not a fan of the super thick cookie. But I will say another tip for this is these do tend to stick, particularly when using these old cookie cutters. So my grandmother, BB, always told me what you're going to do is take your bag of flour, and we're just going to put the cookie cutter in there and get it floured. So flour your cookie cutter, and that will really help keep it from sticking. And you want to do that each time. So we're going to start off with the Jolly Santa, and then you kind of just want to wiggle it back and forth until you get a nice cutout. And of course, this dough can be torn and mashed up to get the cookie out, because we are going to re-roll out the dough every so often. Now these can stick, so you gotta kind of be careful here. Yeah, sometimes they stick. So that tells me that we need a little bit more flour, because, well, this guy had an accident. So let's start over. Let's start over. Sometimes you gotta do that. And we're just gonna roll this all into the middle. Ooh, that is sticking a bit. So we need some more flour on this board. Let's do that. Obviously, you don't want the cookies to break. That wouldn't be good. So we're gonna roll this all out again with more flour and get this together. And this dough's tricky because, man, sometimes it's just really sticky, and other times it rolls out really nicely. So I think sometimes it's just a little bit of luck of the draw. And of course, like I said, I'm not really a baker, so this is just what I remember doing with my BB growing up. Gonna flour this a little more, just to keep this from sticking. I mean, that really is honestly your hardest battle. I can even hear BB's voice in my head telling me, oh, you're gonna need some more flour on that. So we got this to where it's nicely rolled out. Now, some spots are gonna be kind of thinner than others.
as you're doing that. I think this kind of goes without saying, but I can see the mat through it. But since some spots are higher than others, you want to pick the spot that's even, and then you might have to roll out some of the other spots later. All right, so this is going to be floured again, and we're just going to shake it. And then we should be able to pull this puppy right up off of here. Hopefully. Come on, buddy. Yay, we did it, folks. Okay, we got a perfect cookie. So you see, it's really thin. I mean, this is not a thick cookie at all, and that's what you want. So we're going to go ahead and put this guy on the cookie sheet. I'm going to bring it over so you can see it. This is the cookie sheet or baking sheet that I'm using. Just sort of the standard roasting pan here. And you're just going to put them out on the pan like so, and then we'll just keep going. Now, of course, you can do how many ever Santas versus other cookies that you want, but we're going to continue on here with the Santas. There is sort of a way that you can get the most out of the dough. So actually, I might switch over to a star, because the stars are really good for getting in corners like around here. So we might do the star. Ooh, that one came out nicely. See how nice that is and thin? That's gorgeous. These are coming out really well. BB would be so proud of me. We always had such fun doing these. All right, let's flour the bell, shall we? All right, we'll flour up the bell. Stick it on. Ooh, wow. I shouldn't jinx this, but you guys, these are not sticking after we added some more flour. See, I told you. It's that flour that really makes a difference. All right, shall we go for the Christmas tree? Christmas tree is always kind of hard because it's got these little ridges that make it a little harder sometimes. We're going to go up here because I haven't quite rolled out the dough on the bottom yet. And I'm going to show you guys what to do with that excess dough in just a moment. Let's see if I can get this Christmas tree out. And yep, it came out just perfectly. So that's great. And you can kind of dust off any excess flour if you want and put it back into the flour pot there. All right, so when you get a good chunk cut out, you can roll the dough back out, and you'll kind of have to do this several times throughout the process until really all of the dough is used up. So as you see, I'm just scraping it all back into the middle, and then we're going to roll it back out. And it's going to be kind of crumbly. As far as I remember, it's always been sort of crumbly like this. And then we're just going to clean our rolling pin of any excess dough that's stuck to it, because again, like I said a million times already, this dough is just very sticky. All right, we're going to flour up our rolling pin, roll this back out, and just sort of repeat the process until all the cookies are done. So I'm going to go ahead and do all of the cookies, and then I will be back with you when we are ready to put them in the oven. Yay, the cookies are all rolled out. Oh, they look so good already, but we got to get them in the oven. We've got our stars, our Santa Clauses, our bells, our Christmas trees. Now, growing up, my favorite probably were the Santa Clauses because they're so jolly, but gotta say the stars are really easy to do because they're not as intricate as the Santa Clauses, and they don't break apart when you're trying to cut them out. So I quite like the stars. In fact, that's probably why there's more stars than anything else between these two cookie trays. Now I've got about 2 dozen here, and I still have more dough to roll out. So I told you, it does make a lot. Unless you're the Blaylocks and you love them, because these will be gone in like 3 days between all of us. But I absolutely cannot wait to get these out of the oven and try one. We've got our oven there set at 300, and we're going to pop these babies in and set the timer for probably, I'd say, about 20 minutes, but check it at about 10. Just make sure they're not getting brown, because that means they're burnt. You want just sort of a light golden brown, not a brown brown. Well, the timer went off, and our cookies are now out of the oven, baked to a golden brown perfection. And look how gorgeous these babies look. I can't wait to dig into these, but of course, they're a little too hot right now, so we're gonna let these guys cool down, and then we'll get them in our vintage Tupperware.
Well, folks, the cookies are cooled and out of the oven, and they are ready to get into our vintage Tupperware. But of course, before we do that, we gotta have a little taste test, right? We gotta see if they're any good before we serve them to anybody else. BB always let me have a little sneak test before we brought them over to the family, as long as I had one that was broken. And inevitably, there's always one that gets damaged in the process. This poor guy had a little accident coming out of the oven. So we're gonna taste him here, see if he's any good. Yes, indeed, that transports me right back to sitting at BB's wooden round kitchen table, sharing stories and having a cup of coffee, dunking that scotch bread in the coffee. Oh, what fun memories, fun times. And this just couldn't be a more perfect Christmas recipe. So I hope you all will try this scotch bread. The recipe will be down below in the description box. And of course, don't forget, folks, there are other collaborators involved in the Cookies for Santa collab. So go check their channels out, follow the playlist down below, and watch all of the videos. Make sure you comment, subscribe, and like. All of the folks have worked really hard to bake their own special creation for you this Christmas. That will be all for this video, and of course, before my next video, I'll be seeing you over on Instagram at vintage_and_vinyl. And I hope, as always, folks, you will stay in, stay safe, binge YouTube, and have a very Merry Christmas. Bye-bye, everyone.